At this point, I'll ask Brian to join me on the call. As I mentioned, Brian is CTO of Netsolus, and Netsolus is making that transition today to become a cloud service provider, leveraging the Egenera Cloud, the Egenera Cloud Suite. So, good afternoon, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing good.
So I've got a bunch of questions for you, and to start out, can you start by telling us a little bit about the history of Netsolus and about the services you've been providing?
Yeah, so Netsolus was founded in May of 2000, and so we've been in existence now and in business for about 14 years. We originally started out kind of, I think as a lot of probably the people on board here have, as a consulting firm doing systems integration and NT and Linux work and various kinds of consulting and project-based systems. We had a forte into software development for a while, and then about 7 years ago we really launched our data center product and began the transition away from project-based work to truly managed services-based systems, and that completed about 4 years ago. And one of the big drivers for that for us was we were very early adopters of VM hypervising technology. Even before it really existed, we were utilizing VMware Server for clients and things that at the time would have been pretty cutting edge. And then in the last 2 years, we've really kind of continued that transformation, and part of that transformation is taking us down the path that we've lost a lot of our consulting capabilities, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but we're really looking to build a resale channel and leverage Egenera to deliver that to the clients and the MSPs that want to deliver cloud services to their clients in a way that they can do it self-provision and deal with a lot of the day-to-day maintenance and things that they get to charge their clients for, and do it so that we can deliver it at a low cost to them.
And so, as how has your business kind of been impacted by the growth of cloud in the last couple of years? What are you starting to see happen out there?
Well, I think you're seeing a definite decline in kind of the co-location and people having things on site, but you're also seeing a major uptick from our purposes in people coming to us even saying, well, I've got all this stuff on Amazon, or I've got all this stuff someplace, I need someone to manage it. I realized I've just now moved this and I really haven't alleviated any of my maintenance. And so the managed services component, I don't know that has changed. I think it's evolved. And from our business perspective, what's happened is we're seeing a marketed decline in kind of our traditional data center business and a massive uptick in the desire to have VMs and cloud computing capabilities and those kinds of things.
Okay, and kind of what was the moment for you that said, look, we need to get in the game here. We need to be a cloud service provider, and specifically a wholesale cloud service provider, right?
Yeah, I think the defining moment came about 2 years ago. As we continued to expand into other markets, it became we were delivering a lot of cloud to people, but it was very customized. We were building the VMs by hand. We were doing everything at kind of the low level, and you started to see kind of this scale out of a lot of people. And it was driving our costs up. We weren't being able to compete with the Amazons and those kinds of guys. And so at that point, we really reached out and said we need to do a conceded effort to find a provisioning system that can deal with the physical piece and deal with the VM and cloud components of this, and do it in a way that the client can maintain that themselves for the vast majority of it. So the clients that are very capable IT people can white label this and deliver it to their clients, and we can deliver it at a cost performance benefit that allows them to mark it up and make money, and allows us to deliver it and make money.
Okay. So when you say clients, you're thinking the reseller channel is what you're talking
Correct.
about there too. Okay. And what kind of, one of the things I was saying earlier was, it's about being able to differentiate, in today's cloud world. It's about being able to differentiate yourself. What are you guys doing to differentiate the Netsolus cloud?
Well, I think one of the great things that Egenera has allowed us to do is it really allowed, as you talked about, kind of our genetic piece. One of the things we've always done as a data center provider, which made us unique, is we're willing to do custom solutions for people that don't necessarily work at a rack space or an Amazon or Azure. I don't know how much people have experience with those, but you either do it their way or you don't do it at all. And so we're able to really take a lot of legacy applications and special needs from clients and deliver a custom solution. And the reason we were able to do that early on was because we were touching all this infrastructure at a low level and delivering that. And Egenera was the only one we could find that allowed us to keep that genetic piece of who we were, which is this petiteness, the ability to say, I can deal with that load, that application load, because I know that I can customize the environment to that level and still deliver you a stable, standardized platform. And that was really the driving force for us to be using Egenera.
Not to try and lead you here, but what other kind of cloud services are you thinking about putting in that portfolio? Right today at mine, it's really infrastructure as a service for you, both physical and virtual. Where are you headed with it?
Well, I think we're headed to seamless disaster recovery. We're headed towards not just national but global availability zones, large-scale load balancing capabilities. The ability to replicate between data centers and work with Egenera to move those workloads between sites is going to be huge. So some of the roadmap that you and I have been working with, very excited about, and we believe that it will allow us to really compete with many of the larger players while still maintaining kind of that small, intimate feel that most people like with their IT. The problem with an Amazon or Azure or some of those larger rack spaces, you just don't feel like you have a very intimate relationship with them. And here they are holding the keys to your kingdom, right? I think that's one of the reasons that we're really looking to do kind of a white labeled move. Is these resellers, like you talked about earlier, really, and coming from a consulting background like we have, really the trusted advisors at the end of the day. And if they don't trust the cloud provider or don't feel like the cloud provider treats them correctly, they're not going to be successful in the cloud, and the reseller is not going to be successful. So we're really looking at being able to maintain an intimacy with our resellers and with the end users as it relates to delivering cloud services.
And a little bit about your, one of the questions I had was really around your, do you plan to provide cloud services on top of both on as well as off-prem, or is your view for the Netsolus cloud really about the infrastructure you guys own and you guys control?
Yeah, one of the things we're really working on is the ability to work with kind of this cloud in the box, where we'll be able to deliver cloud nodes into data centers or into client-prem and treat it as an actual cloud node, but have it there on site for the client. We're seeing a big desire for that within the banking industry and some of the HIPAA compliance components that are really keeping people from moving to more of a public cloud, right? And so we're working with several resellers now to design this ability to deliver a small rack form factor, Egenera in a box, if you will.
Okay. And my question was, do you plan to offer managed services on top of Amazon's resources, or do you plan to always own or at least have command and control of the infrastructure in some way, shape, or form?
I think that we'll see a hybrid approach over the next several years, and that's one of the other key drivers for us with Egenera is that we're going to see some workloads move up to Amazon. There are some things that it's nice to make Amazon's problem. The distributed denial of service and portability up there allows us to kind of move things up there to fend off this distributed denial of services and let Amazon soak that for us at a much lower cost point. So I think you're going to see some of these public cloud providers really be used as kind of trash bins for bad traffic, if you will. And so it's kind of interesting how we're seeing a development of that with some of our larger clients, where we're helping them with those kinds of things because it's very cost effective to let Amazon soak this for you, and let it trash their network, but leave your network alone, kind of thing.
And tell us a little bit about kind of the different platforms you considered and you looked at, and kind of the key requirements you had when kind of making your cloud provisioning and cloud orchestration, cloud management, decisions.
Well, we looked at about 15. I'll really only talk about the 3 that we looked at. We narrowed it down to 4, Egenera being one of them. We looked at OpenStack, we looked at Cloud Stack, and we looked at the vCloud from VMware. And in the case of OpenStack, it just wasn't mature enough yet, in the sense that it was really more like an Amazon or an rack-space deployment, where it wasn't going to be able to be customized, and it couldn't handle the physical hardware. It was all VM. It was very basic. It was difficult to build out of, and there was a lot of open source technology, which we love, but it was going to require very high-level engineers to maintain that system on a regular basis and to keep it running. Similar kind of situation with CloudStack. We were looking at a lot of software development to get it robust enough to do the billing. We were looking at a lot of Java development, and it too lacked a lot of kind of the features that would required as a managed service provider, which would be the ability to offer resellers the ability to add their own packages and their own templates and those kinds of things into it in a way that seemed seamless and white-labeled. vCloud from VMware was probably the closest competitor, and our biggest issues with it were that it really wasn't designed for multi-tenancy very well. It was really designed as a portal for the enterprise. The multi-tenancy component of it just wasn't there, and it really it just didn't pass the muster as it relates to being able to deliver a multi-tenant secure environment and deliver the necessary chargeback functionality that we needed. And on top of that, it doesn't handle any physical components, which is one of the big pieces: the ability to provision blades, provision direct hardware, rack servers, those kinds of things, in addition to virtual workloads.
So I kind of changed the topic a little bit on you here. Have you kind of talk a little bit about the service you delivered? I mean, what kind of benefits do your resellers see for your service, right? Why should someone sign up to be to the Netsolus Cloud?
Well, I think before, our turnaround times were pretty long. We had anywhere from 2 to 4 days for turnaround because we were hand building everything. The provisioning now happens within, for basic VMs and physical servers, within minutes, and that was a big driver for a lot of people. The other big thing is the instant quoting, so they can go into their platform and really just quote out the environment, build it out almost like a Visio drawing, and get that quote to their salesperson, get it over, and get the deal closed. So that really is driven, I think, the time piece has driven it way down. The other piece is it's allowing us to deliver at a lower cost, because now we're not involving as many high-level engineers to do simple things like deployments and those kinds of things.
And they can brand the service, right? That's my understanding.
Exactly.
Is you decided to allow them to white label, so it looks like it's. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we work very, very closely with the resellers that we're working with to ensure that it really feels and looks like their system. We don't want there to be any confusion, if at all possible, for the client. We want the client to believe that reseller really is. This is their cloud. This is their deal. They're in full control of it. We want those phone calls going to those resellers where they can bill for them, and us to worry about the back-end important parts, that the SAN's delivering, that the blades are delivering, that the infrastructure that they're counting on is being delivered. I think it's a nice segmentation in my preference. We're really good at operations, and these resellers are really good at taking care of clients and helping them and building their projects, right? And I think that what we found very quickly several years ago was to try to be both is really hard, because you're either going to be one or the other. And this partnership arrangement has slowly taken a lot of steam and is really proving to be very, very effective for both parties.
And in that kind of model, right, it occurs to me that that service level agreement is key, right? Both from you to your reseller, and then that reseller on to the end user. And actually, it's something I've always kind of strongly believed, is that SLAs are key to the successful launching of this whole cloud thing, right? Transparent SLAs. So, talk to a little bit about what are the SLAs for the Netsolus Cloud and onwards, right?
Yeah, I mean, we strive for 100% availability. I think if you look at our 7-year history, we are approaching 4.5 nines, which we are very proud of. I mean, if you look at Amazon, year over year, they've only been able to deliver 99.7. So we're way ahead of the market curve on that. But having said that, we do have various levels of resellers that say, I need price is the most important piece to me. I really only need 3 nines. And what some of these in our platform and some of the things we're doing allows us to do is to tailor that SLA against price pressure, so that we can deliver that 100% SLA, or we can deliver the 3 nines SLA, and tailor that to the hardware. And again, that comes from being able to have the service book and service offerings within the Egenera platform, because now there's more of a commodity level SLA and a truly enterprise, never go down SLA, and the reseller can choose that at the moment of purchase, which is really cool.
So they can actually, they transparently make their choice.
Correct.
You trade off price for availability, and it's all there for you to see.
Correct.
Okay. So you've talked about price a couple of times. It's always kind of one of the things I wonder about is cloud really, I'll call it a race to the bottom with Amazon? Are we, I know they've cut prices 25, 30 times in the last few years. Can you guys, how does that play into, and how does that affect you guys in the marketplace?
Yeah, I really look at this the same way I've looked at the data center co-location and some of the basic colo services and what's happened with them over the years. There is always this regional play in the sense that regional resources are going to tend to be more expensive because they're closer to you and they're able to be utilized in that way. And so one of the things we're really doing is really driving these cloud pops in as many locations as possible, and even working with resellers to put them within the same city that they're in, and then supporting that as a solution for them, so that they can deliver those metropolitan area network connections. What that does is the amount they're saving on telecom really make up for any additional costs you would see on the cloud side of the business. And so you're really shifting that profit away from the telecom industry to the reseller and to us. The second component of that is it's a well-known fact within kind of the cloud industry that Amazon right now is buying business, and there's already lots of rumblings, and we have some friends that actually are in San Francisco and work in that area, that price hikes are coming. They're not making very good margins because they've compressed it so far. You're going to see, I think, a rebound in pricing. There are always going to be players in the marketplace that are bad at math. Where they're losing money and they're going to make up for it in volume, right? And but those bad actors will tend to fall away very quickly. But I think you'll see some price compression. Are we going to continue to see 100% margins like we are right now? No, but I think we'll still see very healthy 25-30% margins over the long term.
Okay. And I find it fascinating that you can kind of summarize it by the local aspects. All cloud is local at the end of the day. For you guys, that local presence makes a big and important difference. Not just on the pricing side, but on on performance, on security with the customer, right? On relationship with the customer, knowing that it's in the same metropolitan area.
Right. I think most resellers are well aware of, it's hard to get bandwidth inexpensively into some of these large cloud providers, or even if they'll even do it. There are some offerings coming out from Time Warner Telecom, and some others that are starting to look towards that. But if you really look at it, metropolitan area network connections are always going to be fractions of kind of long haul, and at least for the foreseeable future. And so having these cloud pops like what we're doing, which is continuing to expand those on a pretty heavy basis and working with resellers in areas to deliver those clouds, allow them to take a higher margin and compete effectively price-wise with Amazon, because in many cases these larger clients are wanting direct connectivity and for security reasons, for PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance, those kinds of things, right into that cloud infrastructure. And so that really allows you to shift, like I talked about earlier, that profit that maybe the telecom would have been taken into the pockets of the resellers and into us ultimately.
Okay. And I guess what kind of advice would you give to, I talked about earlier this whole idea of, buy, build, wholesale, retail, resell, right? What kind of, from your perspective, what advice would you give somebody who's kind of at that point in the decision tree and they're trying to assess how they get involved in this, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have, I would argue, having gone through this now and done it extremely painful, cash flow investment and all those kinds of things, to get in and play these games now is, a minimum of a quarter million to $400,000. By the time you buy all the necessary routers and security, and you get your SAS-16s in place and your HIPAA compliance officer and all the things it takes to deliver these solutions, it really is very capital intensive. And if you have that capital and can go out and do it, and you're good at operations, and you don't think it'll distract from your day-to-day project business and your consulting business and your IT support business, then I would suggest you get into it. You're going to have to be viable long term as a managed service provider, or even as a VAR these days. But there's options like us and other people that can say, okay, we've already made that investment, and we can white label that in a way and create a partnership, because we're similar size to some of these MSPs, where CTOs are talking to CTOs and CEOs are talking to CEOs, that it really becomes a close-knit partnership, and they get almost all the benefits of having owned it themselves, but none of the headache.
Kind of one out of the blue on you here too, Brian. And what's the, I know we talked about physical infrastructure as a service, virtual machine as a service. What's kind of the thing that you feel like is the killer app for your clients? What is the thing that almost all of them have to have, need to have, must have when it comes to deploying kind of that complex multi-tier application environment in your cloud?
One of the things we've been extremely successful with, which is one of the reasons we really chose Egenera, was this hybrid cloud solution. And what do I mean by the hybrid cloud? That term's used all over the place these days. And it really, for us, encompasses two things. One, it involves us having VMs inside of our cloud, VMware infrastructure, and also having a physical server or two to run very high transaction-intensive stuff, like large SQL, large Exchange, various other maybe legacy applications that just don't run very well inside of VMs still. And those applications, that hybrid cloud has been very, very successful in us winning against, the rack spaces and the Amazons and those kinds of guys. The second component of that is kind of this idea of the hybrid cloud, where we've deployed quite a few of these, which is the bulk of the infrastructure is here at the data center in one of our cloud nodes. And then, because there's these legacy apps that just don't run very well across the wire, unless you really drive them into Citrix or something like that, to have a small hosting node sitting on site, replicating back to the data center, so that those legacy apps can still stay out on site, but the client gets the full benefit of the cloud. And that's kind of that hybrid cloud differentiation. And the ability to deliver that has been huge in our growth on that side of the business.
Okay, so final question for me is really, for those folks on the call that want to get in touch with you and potentially sign up and become a reseller, how do they find you?
We've got our website, netsolus.com. They're also welcome to give me a call. I'll give my number here out, and I'll make sure that it gets out through the meeting. But it's 816-410-5987, and I'll be more than happy to work with anybody after the call that is interested.
So, Brian, thanks again for the time.
And thank you, guys.
So,